Are you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey and Matt Watson.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it.
And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here with Sandy Kemper, who will be sitting in for Matt Watson today.
Yeah, taller, balder version. Don't have the fancy tennis shoes. I'm wearing my cowboy boots, but I think Matt will be okay.
Well, we always try to bring the highest quality guest possible. Yeah. So I appreciate.
Bottom of the barrel, man.
I was going to say I'm still looking for that guy. If you have any recommendations while you're here, I think
check
that
my Rolodex.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, I'll take a copy of that Rolodex while you're at it.
It just shows you how damn old we are.
Yeah,
like I'm talking about Rolodexes.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's
so
sad.
Now, before we get started here, a couple housekeeping matters. Today's episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Fullscale.io. However, because Sandy has been kind enough to come with and join me today, we'll just also mention that you should go to c2fo.com. We'll say it's co-brought to you by Paid in Full with Sandy's Sweat Equity. So
it's the only way I can get on the show.
Yeah.
I've got to bribe you.
Yeah, with a free plug. Yeah,
that's perfect. Love it.
So go to C2FO. Wait, C2FO. All right, cool. We've met the requirement.
Well done.
And now we can talk about the stuff. Now, I do want to say before we get too far into this that your list of key points for today required Googling on my behalf.
Well, I tried to keep it simple for you, and there's a couple of pictures there for you. But I'm happy you went to the Google.
I'm curious, but yeah, the pictures are interesting. Why is this guy jumping off a cliff?
I think that's someone pulling their hair out and their shoes are on fire.
Oh, I see. So it's a drawing of an entrepreneur.
Precisely.
I get it. So you get it. You get it.
I thought he was trying to fly, actually.
That's really what makes you such an amazing guest is that you do get it. So we're not going to talk about this for the whole episode, but let's just get something out of the way. Your company, C2FO, just raised something small, a couple hundred million?
Yeah.
Well, first off, congrats.
Thank you.
And I know that that's not what you want to spend the whole episode talking about, but I think that I'm going to get yelled at by our listeners if we don't address it. But
yeah, I think Matt said it the last time we were on the show. Is that it's not raising is not something that you celebrate, right? Raising is something that you do in order to accelerate growth. And you celebrate the growth, you celebrate the team, the great stuff that they're doing. So I think it's the best type of raise you can do is actually revenue and income. Sometimes you can get a little bit more advanced in what you're doing because the raise can push you forward faster, and in so doing you can accelerate future stage revenue. So we did this raise even though we had a lot of money in the bank from the previous raise, which was also fairly significant. But we did this to accelerate growth for us, not this year, but to think about growth for us in 2020, 2021, so that when and if we're able to plant those seeds now with that type of investment, we're able to harvest a higher growth rate in the coming years.
Now that's on the tail end of a not. I mean, I don't understand how you only got half that amount the prior year. 100 million and 200 million. Is this how you do it? You stack it up like we get it going 400, 800, 1.6 next time, or
knock on wood. I think we're done.
Well, I think wow. That's something that I hear a lot of people say, and then every time.
Listen, I've been saying it for the last 3 or 4 rounds. Maybe this time.
I believe that I sat down with you and at your office and talked to you about this, and I said, "Yeah, I think this is the only money I need to raise." And it was you that told me, "Yeah, I say that a lot, and then it's never true." So
repeated phrase.
Well, but once again, congrats. I think what you're doing with C2FO is great for Kansas City, and I think that your product is pretty awesome. So
Thank you.
Now with that, I think what a question that a lot of people would have is you look at that kind of money coming into a company, and how does something like that affect ownership, stock options, and why does that matter? Both as a founder and as someone that's coming in and working at a company like yours.
So starting off with you mentioned 2 raises that were of some size, right? The 100 million a year ago, 200 million this year. In both raises, we were able to have some secondary shares be acquired by the new investors, meaning it wasn't primary capital just coming into the company. So you've got secondary and primary. Primary just goes to the company. When an old shareholder sells something, that's a secondary transaction. In both cases, we were able to get secondary dollars into our associates' hands. So if someone had been with us for a long period of time and they were vested in their options, this was an opportunity for them to get some liquidity against those options. So you raise a really interesting point, which is I think in Kansas City and other places in the Midwest, I serve on the board of a company, as an example, a tech company in Des Moines. I don't believe that we assign enough value to options inside the Midwest. And it's probably because we haven't had a lot of extraordinary exits. I mean, there's been some, but you look at the sort of extraordinary number of exits and also a lot of failures on the West Coast, but there's more liquidity happening on the coasts. And because of that, there's more wealth being generated, and there's a little bit more competition about who has what options and what those options are worth. The more successful opportunities we have to give people liquidity against their options enforces the value of options. It's still the most efficient way to create wealth for oneself, much more efficient than salary. It also instills great ownership ethos into the minds and hearts of the folks that are working for you. So it's ownership. And every one of our associates has, after a period of time, everyone has at least 3,000 shares. The last round valuation was around $25 a share. So the lowest base of ownership in the company today is almost $100,000.
Right.
As that share price continues to go up, and of course, with that, and when we do give those options, every time we give an option grant, I'm one-on-one with the team member, and I'm saying, look, your salary is for your job, right? Do your job, stay in your swim lane, go get great stuff done for the company. But we give you shares because we want you to think like an owner, which means no one's ever going to say, hey, your tech or your product or your SRM, and you don't get to have a view on this other idea. No, you're an owner. And it has to be enough ownership that individual feels like someone is taking something from them when they don't listen to their voice about what's right to do for the company, regardless of the department where they're located.
I love anything that puts employees or participants in a position of having like a vested interest in the success of the business. And like you said, it changes the mentality from being an employee to an owner. And it's easy to say, like, I want you to make decisions as if you own the company, but if you don't really feel that way in the end, why would you?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to unpack a little bit more and maybe be a little bit tough on what you just said. I think actually there's not enough money in the world to give someone who doesn't have the passion and the heart for ownership incentive to be an owner.
True.
Right, because then they're just a mercenary.
Yep.
So first, hire the people that are owners by sheer dint of who they are and how they think, owning problems, owning solutions, owning relationships. And then figure out a way to give physical monetary value for that way that mind and that heart works. So hire owners, but then make sure that you're not hypocritical relative to asking them to continue to be owners without giving them significant ownership in the thing that you want them to create. So that's how we've always thought about it. And we screw up all the time about bad hires, et cetera. Happily, not too much, but nobody gets it right. The key thing is with the right mentality, rewarding that mentality with options ought to be more commonplace here. It is on the coast. It needs to be more commonplace here. You know, and it was interesting. We just acquired a company in India, and I think the option pool in India was only 6 or 7 people. It's 100 people in the company. So we talked about it internally and said, how do we think about this, right? Salaries are much different in India, but we say salaries are for you to do your job. Ownership should be sort of fundamentally the same, regardless of where you are, what economy, what your cost of living is. So, you know, we've got folks in India making, $10,000 annual salary that now just received 2,000 shares and options. So a very different environment there, but yet we felt it's still important enough to give significant ownership, fiscal ownership, to those individuals because we know they think like owners.
So the allotment of ownership interests, options, or whatever it might be, is a hot topic with anybody that starts a business, especially those that are bootstrapped.
Yeah.
Do you have any input and advice for, like, I mean, take it way back to, like, we didn't just cash a $200 million check. Like, we're just thinking that this might actually work. I get asked a lot, well, how do I determine what to give up and for how much? I'm like, I give some really basic input. I'm like, well, you got to kind of figure out what feels good and what feels right.
Well, you're a lot more risk there than too. So we thought about things in the early stages as percentage of company, right? So you're 5 or 6 or 7 people, and you're thinking about 2 and 3 and 4% ownership interest for your co-founders, et cetera. As the company grows, you've de-risked it, right? So you begin thinking less about percentage, you start thinking about dollar amount or share amount, and then it's dollar amount. And as time has passed for us, we've moved away, of course, and now we're thinking about it as, let's talk about the dollar ownership, not the number of shares, not the percentage, because you can assign value to it. In the early days, there's no value.
I want to keep.
It's a hope and a prayer, and if it works, great, and you're going to be very well taken care of. But you can't take any of that to the bank ever.
I want people to note that the number that you stated was 1, 2, 3, 4%, not 40. And I see a lot of people, like I caution, now maybe that is worth it, maybe it's not, but you can't get that equity back in a lot of cases. And then, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, or there's a lot of unproven things. Like you mentioned in the beginning, you can't really assign a value to it. It's not proven, and you definitely can't take it to the bank.
Yeah, and I think the thing, one of the more important things for those who are starting out a business, and you and I have done that a few times now, is that I've always been lucky enough to be able to ask those people who are putting money in, those would be preferred investors, where they're going to have a place in the capital stack above and before the common. But I've always had success in asking them to give the same rights to the common in terms of certain privileges, not the liquidation stack, right? Because if they're putting their money up and the common's sort of what you get for founding, you don't get to get your money out because you didn't put any money in, you just put sweat equity in. But as the founder and as founders, I would advise, when you're starting off, try to create equality of voice for the common and the pref shares. Not the quality of liquidation, but a quality of voice. And I think this is one of the places where, I know it wouldn't go any further than that, meaning some of these companies where you've got some abuses happening, where someone has, a founder gets 10 times the voting power for their shares. The old adage, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And I'm not saying that by sheer death these people are corrupt. I am saying it's very tempting when you have mass control, you're not held accountable. So I would never, knock on wood, and I've never asked for it, and I don't think I ever will, ask for special voting privileges. All I've asked is for equality between common and pref on voice.
Sure. Will you take a quick minute, and for those that aren't versed in this subject, just define what's the difference between a preferred share and a common share?
Yeah, so it's another kind of fun. It's not fun. It's actually pretty complex and sometimes difficult. But one thing I would say to be very careful of starting out is if you are being asked to give participating preferred. So preference is, say your company doesn't work out and you have to liquidate it, and you've raised $10 million and they own half the company, right? Because you capitalized it at 10 and they put in 10 and now it's worth 20. So the common's worth 10, but you're only selling for 9. The common's not going to get anything. The pref's going to get their money first because they're the ones that actually put the hard currency at risk inside your company. So that's preference, and that's logical. Where I see problems is when, or where founders are trying to push the value of the company up, and in so doing, they have to give special privileges to the pref in order to get that higher valuation because they don't want to take any dilution. The problem is, on the downside, you can get destroyed. Often, folks would go to something called a participating preferred. And a participating preferred isn't just priority to the common in the liquidation, but rather I get my pref, so I put in X amount of pref, 10 million of pref, and let's say you're selling for, in this case, the company is not selling for 9, it's selling for 30. I get my 10 out, right? And then I get 10 also now in participating stock. So I'm basically getting 20 of the 30. So I'm getting 2x. So that's a participating preferred. I get my money out, and I get to participate in the liquidity event of the sale. So in this case, instead of having it be 50-50, right, it's going to be, in this case, it's going to be 60-30 in favor of the pref. So I was talking to an entrepreneur the other day who did not know whether they had participating pref or regular pref. And it was astounding to me that the individual who was the founder of the company couldn't tell me what his capital stack was.
I run into people a lot that are, I give the advice to people that you have to consider just as much what happens if things go really well as the mentality a lot of people have is, how do I prevent the sky from falling? It's just like, I feel like so many people are dealing with downside scenarios in their thought process. So what happens if everything goes exactly the way you hoped it would and then better? What happens then? And much like you just defined, some people are like, is that possible? It's like
a Midwestern founder.
I mean,
exactly.
yeah, sure it is, but I mean, what are you going to do there? So,
Well, it gets to something that I think we've talked about before, and again, advice and counsel to folks who are out there raising or otherwise. We've talked about CAPSAC, PREF, Common, et cetera, participating PREF. When I'm speaking to young entrepreneurs, my final wish for them is may they accept the lowest value they possibly can from the best VC they can possibly find. Right? It's much better to have a great VC, a great funder at a moderate valuation than a not so good VC at a high valuation. Because what happens in this world is the A players, this gets to your point about what happens if you're really successful. The A VCs are looking for upside. Everyone else is trying to protect on the downside. So if you get a high quality, high caliber VC, they know that one or two of their companies is going to pay off the portfolio. The Bs and the Cs, they know that they're not going to get that rocket ship, and they have to then protect on the downside. So that's when they start bringing participating preferred. That's when they start bringing additional voting rights. That's when they start machining you down. So lowest value you can accept from the highest quality VC you can find.
and that's such an interesting outlook, Sandy. I think that so many people think they get hung up on, well, what percentage do I own? That doesn't mean, it doesn't matter. Like, what's that percentage worth? And I talked to a lot of people.
100% of nothing, still nothing.
Wait, hang on, let me do the math.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
Put your shoes back on. Put
Yeah,
your Jethro.
well, I had them off already,
You're
so I figured why not count? But yeah, I think that what you just laid out is a really important thing for anybody to consider that's trying to raise money. Is so much has to do with the people. Like, find someone that has a huge vested interest in what you're doing and is not going to make self-serving decisions is a much, much, much better option than about anything else. So,
and the other point of advice is that if you can find investors, maybe they're VCs, maybe they're not, maybe they're just really great angels that are the best you can find, and those are wonderful people to find on your board, and as advisors, find operators, find practitioners, not just investors. Guys and gals who have been there, done that, are immeasurably more valuable to me than those who have ethereal dreams and ideas and really just come to the party with money.
yeah, I get a lot of feedback on that too. Then they say, well, I don't want to lose control. I'm like, why wouldn't you want someone that's in the business of making businesses huge and hugely successful to come in and help you do that? Like, and I've actually opened a few eyes with this. I'm like, do you really enjoy trying to figure everything out? Or what? So what's easier, Sandy? And you can take your shoes off if you need here. What's easier, trying to climb the mountain alone or asking those on top to just give you a hand and pull you up?
Oh, brother, I'm going after the guys on top all day long.
Right. And that's the key ingredient. There's that's one of the things I have enjoyed so much about my relationship with my co-host on the show, Matt Watson, is Matt has traveled down a path and through waters and navigated all this stuff to an exit that was huge. Mm-hmm. And with that, there's such an interesting perspective and storyline and all that. And that kind of input and advice and perspective is what you should be looking for.
Yeah, and by the way, it's super hard to find, right? I mean,
well, right, because not a whole lot of people have done that. So,
yeah, and they don't have to. When I say operator, they don't have to be someone who has had a great exit. Someone who has built something, met a payroll, employed people, dealt with the challenges of growth and lack of growth, in tech or out of tech, in your industry, out of your industry. Just get practitioners to be your advisors. Get people who have operated something.
Okay, so next on our list here, when it comes to problems, product or people, which one is the most important when starting a business?
Yeah, the older I get, the more reluctant I am to give advice, and yet here I am giving all this sort of silly advice.
And by the way, we offer a money-back guarantee on the advice. If you don't like it or it's not useful,
it's a free show, right?
Yes,
okay,
yes,
good,
yeah. Well, at least it is now. But after this episode, I might start charging. This is good stuff.
And like I said, for me at least, there's some people who can optimize certain solutions, who can bring tech to something that already exists and optimize it, find a way to make it better. For me, I've always been a little bit more origin-based or problem-based. So always it's a problem. Find a problem. For me, find something that's just not working. And if you're lucky, you can find people who also believe that there's a way to solve this problem. So for me, it's a problem, and it's usually personal. Something that really, really gets me out of bed in the morning. then surrounding myself, or being fortunate enough to find others who feel the same way, and then building a product. So it's problem, people, product, and it doesn't have to be an extraordinary product on day one. Just get it out there, get it in use, get people using it. And
I
then,
feel like I need a little bell for when people should really denote something, because the baby's always ugly, people.
Oh, yeah.
Just put it out there.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
and there's so many famous quotes, like if you don't look back at your first product launch with absolute terror and fear
yeah,
about
like-
what you
like-
put out on the world, then
Yeah.
you waited too long, right?
Well, we were lucky, so that it's for me, again, problem, people, product, and then giraffe. So giraffe is that entity, the individual, the corporation, the customer who sticks their neck out for you. And this is the cool thing for us, at C2FO, our first really large, big customer was Toys R Us.
That's fitting.
And their mascot
Yeah.
is Jeffrey the giraffe.
Wow.
And they did. They stuck their neck out for us, and they helped us design product. And that's why when you come to our office, you'll see a conference room called Snyderman. Snyderman is the individual at Toys R Us who helped us build the product for his company that then we perfected with them to go sell to others. And Jeff is still an advisor to our company, again, an operator. He's at a different company now, but he's an advisor to us. And he's got his own conference room. And remembering that legend, that lore, get the product out there, get it with somebody who's a giraffe who's willing to take the risk, stick their neck out, and then iterate. And it gets better. Get that groove going on making incremental changes as you go. It does not have to be perfect when it goes out the door.
Well, the reason that that's really important when it comes to solving the problem that you're attempting to solve is the people that are going to use it are going to be your loudest voice and what they really want and what they'll buy. And without that input, you're guessing. You're shooting baskets in the dark. You are literally in a pitch black gymnasium taking 3-pointers. You're spending money. You're burning it. And you're guessing. So put it out there, let it be ugly, and own it. Like say, hey, we want to hear what you have to say.
Haven't you found, and I have a few friends like this as well, who actually seem to enjoy shooting in the dark because it feels good to shoot, even if they don't know whether it's going in or not. And these, for me, the problem I've got with that is you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
here, the story I was about to say is that I remember being on the phone a couple of times with the team and the boys and girls at Toys R Us, and just full on battles on why we could or couldn't do something. And it's not easy, right? Because you turn the lights on and you realize that your jump shot doesn't look like what you thought it did in the dark.
Or maybe you're not even in the gym.
But you gotta dude, you've got to turn the lights on. I mean, there's a lot of folks out there with great ideas, and the motion feels great to them. But if the lights are off, if you're not operating with someone who is wanting to buy, I love your analogy about shooting in the dark. I'm gonna use that again. That it feels good, right? It really does. I mean, you can imagine that the ball's going through the
When
net.
you hear an occasional swish, you're like, yes,
Well,
I'm the greatest of all
let's just
time.
Take the swish out. It's just the idea of imagining, and we just got to get out of our minds, get into practicality, go build something, warts and all, turn the light on, see that shot's not going, and then correct the shot.
Well, I think the worst thing you could do is, like you mentioned, take the swish out as now in your mind, every single one went in.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I am
exactly.
the greatest
That's
jump shooter of all time.
And that's tough, right?
Yeah.
Because it's sometimes you can get into that idea paralysis where the idea is beautiful and you just don't want to put execution against it because you love this honeymoon phase of how great the idea is. But as soon as you put wheels on it, as soon as you turn the lights on, it does sometimes get ugly.
Now, on the flip side of that, and since we're talking about interesting analogies, I'm very known for saying, and I didn't invent this concept, sometimes you do have to jump and then build wings.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now, with that, I have added a caveat over the years. Before you jump, just make sure you have the stuff you need to build the wings, because it's hard to stop and get it. But the reason I think that sometimes that's important is the right time never comes. I hear the right time myth a lot, and people are, I'm waiting for the right time. That's just an excuse for why you're not doing it. Yeah. But on some levels, the impending impact that you're about to make on the canyon floor really forces you to do a lot of shit and do it faster and be serious about it. I'm no longer doing all these other side things. I'm like, I need to build wings. I need to build wings. I need to build wings.
Yeah.
It's not like maybe I should go shop for wings, or maybe I should go in the gym and shoot baskets in the dark.
You got to put it out there. And you know what? The other thing you've got to do is you have to fear failure in a major way, but it can't paralyze you. And last time we chatted about a lot of things that I had worked on that failed, and everyone has those, right? And if you are afraid of that, then you're never going to move beyond that honeymoon phase. You're never going to take the jump. You're never going to turn the lights on. So understand that almost everything good that's happened in my corporate life has come because of failure. And learning from that failure and picking yourself back up and going to do something with somebody who's maybe smarter, give you better advice, help you build a better company. And my wonderful bride and my 4 children, first marriage was a failure. Second marriage, a hell of a lot better.
It's funny.
You learn.
I said that the other day. I was joking, and my wife was near me, but I mentioned I was at an event at the Sprint Center and standing out in the hallway, and I said, man, I'm just so much better at marriage the second time.
Yeah, well, I think Christina said to me, we've been married now almost 24 years now. The point I'm making here is that Christina said to me, I don't think I would have liked you in your first marriage.
You know what? I think that's true with mine too, and I learned a lot of things.
Yeah.
With that, I think one of the things that's important for successful business people and entrepreneurs is having the support of those people around you. My wife is a saint, Jill. I hope you are listening, because I did say that live on the podcast. But it's about patience and
out-sainting each other. Yeah, it is not easy. And that's
they can be co-saints. They're all equal.
Look, and kids too,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
true.
We.
I couldn't be married to me.
Well, I'm not sure I could be married to you or me, for that matter. Thankfully, I'm not. But you think about the sacrifices that we all make. My thinking on this has been a lot of fun to build a company around the kitchen table on day one and have it continue to be conversation at dinner around the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Right, where ultimately, if you do it right, your kids are going to have some ownership, so they better understand how the business works. I love the idea of having that the family connection to the business. So to us, I have a lot of people ask about how do you manage work-life balance. There's no such thing as work-life balance. There's work-life harmony where you can really rejoice in the things that you're struggling on in the business that are on the table. Some of the best advice I've had have come from, I remember my 6-year-old daughter who said to me the other day, it's a long time ago, said to me, what does this C2FO thing do? And I reached over and I pinched her. I gave her some esoteric explanation about how it was like homogenous. There's heterogeneous pricing of homogeneous assets at disparate prices, right? And she's like, what? And we allow companies to name the price for the product they want. And I reached over and she still didn't get it. And I pinched her. And she said, ow, why'd you do that? I said, well, now pinch yourself. She pinched herself harder. I said, well, when you're in control, when you name the price, when you do the thing that you're doing, in other words, when she was the one initiating it, it was easier for her. So it's easier for that person to name their price when they know that's something that they're doing versus being told, this is the price you must take. So, and that was that, for me, the distillation of the company into you get to do what you want, to name your price, and we described it in a way that was that what you're doing for yourself or to yourself versus someone else coming in and telling you what to do. So those conversations have always been very eye-opening for me.
I think you'll enjoy this. My daughter's been wanting to open a lemonade stand.
I'm in.
And I've been having a very adult, high-level conversation. She's 5.
Awesome.
She turns 5 this weekend. But with that, I told her, I said, well, and you talk about like your story with the pinch and whatever you named your heterogeneous.
Fancy talk.
There will be a quiz on that later.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, you can look it up and look at the patents. I mean, it's actually, heterogeneous consumption of homogeneous assets at disparate prices. Yeah. So yes, my 6-year-old daughter looks at me like, yeah, well, you got any more big words you can use, Dad? Because you're trying to impress me. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? I got to figure this out.
So Dylan wanted to open a lemonade stand, and I told her, I said, but you don't know anything about opening a lemonade stand. She said, well, I want to learn, and she's like that. So I took her a couple weeks ago. I took her to the Innovate Her event.
Oh, nice.
And it was it was demo night. Yeah. And I made her sit through 9 presentations from local female founders.
Outstanding.
She wanted to give a presentation at the end. She asked me if she wanted to talk about her lemonade stand.
That's good.
Now with that, I didn't let her do that because I was trying to let them keep their show on
track.
track.
I'm an operator. I can actually help be an advisor, and I'd like to be an investor as well.
Well,
that's okay.
I'm going to give her your contact info. But you'll love this next part. So she says, well, Daddy, what do I do? Which, by the way, while we were there, Jessica Powell from the Startup Foundation gave me a stack of Post-it notes and a pencil so Dylan could be a little less antsy. She made herself a name tag.
Come on.
That said Dylan, and stuck it on herself because she saw other people had names. Like she knew that she's like, I want people to remember who I am. I'm like, you're not even 5 yet.
Dude, I'm in.
So at the end of this, she said, well, she made me a one that said Daddy, At the end of the presentations, I took 2 steps and I realized I should probably not be wearing that in that setting.
Well, that's a fair point.
So
Fair point.
I took it back.
Charming,
but
charming,
yeah,
but a fair
well, I thought it was cute for a second. I was like, okay, this might be taken the wrong way. So I told her, I said, well, Dylan, you don't have any money. You need money to start your business. She defined to me that she did already have lemonade. And I was like, well, you might be. I said, but you need some money. She goes, well, what do? I said, you're in a room full of people. Go find some money.
Come on.
She raised $6.
That's outstanding.
She went and asked. I didn't think she was going to do it. She just started asking people. Donald Hawkins tried to give her his wallet. I let her take the $6, but and this is great. So we raised $6. I told her she needed to get 5, so she's oversubscribed. She had $6. I had pictures of it. I'll post them on Instagram because I think you guys will love it. Then on the way back, I was like, well, you have to learn how to keep track of your money, and you need a business plan. We got home. She would not let me put her to bed without writing a business plan. So we put the money away in an envelope, and she wrote $6 on it. And then she said for the business plan, she flipped the envelope over and just wrote "sell lemonade."
Perfect.
And I said, this is the
Done.
best business plan I've ever seen.
That's right.
Simple. It's to the point, and you're focused on sales. So, yeah, I was.
And that's the balance we're talking about,
Yeah.
right? As I said, it's not balance as much as harmony, and enjoying that opportunity, which a lot of folks just don't have, right? That's the joy of being. It can be very risky. We talk about. I remember very early on talking about whether C2FO would make it or not. I mean, I'm sure there's still risks as to whether or not we will. Lots of things can happen over time, but I remember at the table talking about, one of our children reads in the paper that you raised $100 million, you raised $200 million, or you're worth whatever you're worth, and having sort of that existential conversation is, that's maybe what it's worth today. We have to work to make sure that it continues to be worth that in the future, and it may not be. So, letting them understand the risk aside, the risk part of the equation, to compensate for the headline silliness of $100 million or $200 million, and there's still a lot of risk in everything that we do, whether you've got $100 or $200 million bucks, or $10 million or $1 million or 100,000. It can go away.
And in a couple previous nights before that, because we've been talking about the lemonade stand for a while, and I was talking to her about profit. I was trying to teach a four, soon to be 5-year-old about what profit was, and I said it's when you spend more money than you bring in. And she said, well, what happens? I said, well, then your lemonade stand would have to close. I said, I feel bad, but I was laughing. I said, we might have to move out of her house. And she started crying.
Too far.
I know. That's but I was like, oh my God. But I realized I may have taught her a very important life lesson, or just scarred her for life. But
And I was one of my very first technology companies. Big move after I left the bank was to build a company called eScout that later became Perfect Commerce and is now traded on the London Stock Exchange. It was an okay exit. It wasn't great. Some people made some money. Some people lost some money. So it was not a fantastic success. And Lord knows I thought it was going to be a pretty significant failure at many points. And I remember driving by, and this is my point about fear being a paralyzer. You've got to put it out of your mind, so that when you have those fearful thoughts, you have to also have those wondrous what-if thoughts. And the way you do this, you've got to balance it. So I remember driving by the school thinking, here I'd been pretty successful running a bank, but reputationally I felt this was going to be a potential failure for me. And what did that mean? And wasn't making a lot of money back then. Made some money in the bank, put it all into the company. And I remember driving by the school wondering if I was going to be able to keep the house and my kids would still be able to go to that school. And that's what happens. And you've got to, at the same time that's in your head, it does, to your point, you got to build wings, I got to build wings, I got to build wings. But you also need to celebrate the opportunities, the moments when, oh my God, what if?
Yep.
So for every moment of fear that you have in your mind, let that steel yourself, let that be the thing that gets you to build your wings. But don't deprive yourself of the what if, right? So equal parts. Fear can motivate, fame can motivate. Make sure that you've got the what if in mind as you're thinking about both the down and the upside.
the first step in making $1 million is believing you can make $1 million.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's that what if, and that's something that a lot of people have asked me over the years, and they said, well, what do I need to do to make more money? I said, well, you need to quit focusing on money and get good at something. That's a good start, but you also have to believe that you can do it. And most people don't conceptualize, like, what is $1 million? What is $1 billion? What is $1 trillion? And, you think about it and you're like, wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot of zeros.
Okay, so you were just talking about one of your past companies, and that was prior to C2FO. One thing that's guaranteed to occur over any timeline are ups and downs economically. What are some of your thoughts on how you can run your business in, around, or prepare for a recessionary environment?
Good call. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing of late in our company, and it's not something you need to get down nailed on day one, but certainly year 5, year 6, or whatever, how many years we are now. We're 10 years now. Focusing on the unit economics of your business, right? So a rising tide can carry many ships. And if you're in a rising economic environment, I think we could be going into a recession. I've certainly seen manufacturing inside the data that we analyzed. It would appear that we're already in a manufacturing-led recession. We may come out of it as the federal national banks, the Federal Reserve, and others prime the economy by lowering interest rates to cause people to want to spend versus save. 2 days ago, there was $17 trillion of negative interest rate debt in the world, with the thought that maybe the trade talks were coming back together today with China and the United States. That number went to $15 trillion, but still $15 trillion of negative interest rate debt. So this has never happened before in the history of the world. And so that tells me we're in precarious times. I worry about it I worry about globalism. I worry about anti-globalism and the rise of nationalism. I worry a little bit about isolationism and what that does to the world's economy at a time when we're sort of balancing on a razor's edge with all this, I would argue, false negative interest rate, or falsely created or improperly created negative interest rate. So in that environment, what you want to do is focus on the stuff that you can control. All right, so unit economics matter. That which you build. So what's it cost you to acquire a customer? How long do you hold on to that customer? What's the lifetime value of that customer? And as you get more and more customers, of course, then you're able to get more and more data. You're able to get smarter and smarter about what you do. And so for us, and again, this was sort of fundamental. The reason we took the $200 million from the Vision Fund was $150 million from them and $50 million from our insiders. The reason we did that was we felt really good about our unit economics. So our cost to acquire had come down 40% in 2 years, while our revenue per unit, per customer acquired, had gone up 160%. Okay, so that's good. So you've got the unit economics there. Your costs are going down to acquire that single entity, and that single entity is producing more revenue. Now, the other thing you've got to think about is how many of those entities do you have, right? So if you're just buying one customer, it doesn't matter because you don't have a company. So at the same time, over 2 years, the number of new businesses we brought in, the cadence of new businesses coming to the company in the course of a year went up 95%. So mass acceleration of new businesses coming in, driving at the same time cost to acquire, costs going down, revenue going up, and lifetime revenue. It's, for us at least, we've been blessed because we don't have revenue attrition. So the cohort of customers that we brought in our first year in 2010 actually now make 3 times as much money for us and accelerate 3 times as much cash for them as they did in 2010. So with those metrics, I feel like, maybe we've got something. We can put a little bit of money into the program and expand globally and make sure that we've built a machine that works. Now we need to make sure that we are globally present everywhere we can possibly be in a globe, and that's why we did that raise.
I mean, there was a lot of depth around the simplicity in what you just stated, but basically, to revisit some of that, these basic unit economics are important. This is like, what's it cost to acquire a customer? What are they worth?
How long do you keep them?
How long do you keep them? But past that, there are some other things too that I think that it's important to prepare for, and looking at even things like your own failure. Why do people leave? And if we're talking recessionary, and we had Matt Watson here, Matt would actually tell you that when it came to Vin Solutions, an economic recession was what lit his business on fire.
Yeah.
Because they provided a level of the solution and cost savings for car dealers that was extraordinary, that their competitors did not. So their unit economics actually flipped did a full 180 when it came to the recessionary look at things, and they were able to understand why people would leave, why they would stay, and use that to their advantage when there was a change.
Yeah,
so
I think I think history is full of examples of great companies being created in recessionary environments for 2 reasons. One, sometimes individuals get laid off and they've got to go build their thing. Second, nobody feels catalyzed in a really lush time to do anything. Everybody's just sort of counting their money.
Well, that was Matt. That'll be Matt's exact
Yeah.
statement, is talking about, you know, the car dealers and times of
Yeah.
boom. They didn't care. They're
No.
like, oh, we're overspending, no big
Exactly,
deal. And
exactly.
but that's back to that canyon floor. Build wings, build wings, build wings. So some of these things are good, but when I look at a situation like that, and now I'm looking at the people that were overspending and okay with counting their money. If you get your unit dynamics right and you think a little bit about your business, theoretically you'll have more money to count while you're
yeah.
kicking back, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, and you can know where to spend, right? So if you don't have, again, I don't want to give advice because I know there's so many different ways to do things and so many ways that are good and bad. But yeah, if you know that you've built something, and as an example, you don't have revenue attrition, then what is the lifetime value of that customer? So for us, we realized we were underspending on acquiring. So, okay, great. You've increased the amount of new business that you're getting, or the new businesses are coming in from X to, gosh, what did I say? 2X in 2 years. We increased, 90, 100%. Could we have increased 200% and spent a little bit more money to do so, knowing that those that we acquired don't leave? And the answer is yes. So again, that's part of the rationale behind. That's when you know it's okay to take a little bit of money into the company, when you know that the machine is working in a way that can sustain itself, and you've got the fuel to power the machine through new capital, new cash.
And I think that's all really valuable. In kind of a final statement with that, if you don't understand your own unit economics, you don't understand your own business.
It's right back to your.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much we just talked about the ugly, hard part of running business, right? You can't play demigod with the basketball with the lights out. You got to know that your shot's going in. You got to know what your unit economics are. You got to know what your retention is, and importantly, with all of the stuff we've talked about here, and we talked about tactics and strategy, unit economics, et cetera. You know, the great thing about being in a company that is sort of always new and growing, you get to shoot a cultural arrow every day. So then, I don't know if people are going to follow the analogy or not, but imagine that you're a pretty decent marksman and you're taking that arrow out of your quiver and you're aiming for a target that's a ways away. The arrow, the longer it flies, the farther off course it's going to go, unless it's dead center. And very few marksmen or women can shoot dead center. The good news is in a company, if you're aware of this, you can shoot another arrow each and every day. You can shoot another arrow every conversation you have. So making sure that you're shooting as many cultural arrows as you can, knowing that not always are you going to be on target, but putting culture in front of strategy. Obviously, strategy is more important than tactics. You know, people say strategy eats tactics for lunch. Well, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Get the culture right inside your company. Make sure you know who your customer is. Make sure that you know that the why of your company. So for us, the why isn't the 1.2 trillion accounts receivable and accounts payable we have matched in the market, or the $1 billion a day of funding, or whatever metric you want to throw out there. For us, at least for me, the most important number is that the U.S. government said in their survey and their formulas they attached to early delivery of capital to companies who are growing. The U.S. government said we will have created 110,000 new jobs in the U.S. economy this year just from what this little cadre of 300 people are doing over here at C2FO in the United States. That's the why of the company, getting people the capital they need to grow their business. That's why we haven't had that much. We haven't had attrition of customers, but more importantly, we haven't had a lot of attrition of our team members. Right? Making sure you've got the why right. People are going to stay with you because they believe they're owners and they understand what you're doing makes a difference. Get culture right.
You know, I've seen a meme that has gone through my Facebook or LinkedIn or some feed somewhere a couple times, and it said, it was just like generalist, and it said CFO says, what if we invest all this money into training our people and then they leave?
Yeah,
and then it says CEO, well, what happens if we don't and they stay? Like,
exactly right. And amen, brother.
You know,
amen.
I'm not much of a meme quoter, but that's one worth thinking about.
Yeah,
and it's you know, that's tough. And you look at different companies that have different sizes of people, and then you take companies like yours and ours, like you are in India and other places, you're worldwide.
Yeah.
We have the majority of full scales clients, or not clients, are of our staff are in the Philippines. And trying to balance culture across different cultures is challenging. And I've spent a lot of time looking at that, and how do you balance the culture needs within your office, especially when you're providing services to another company.
So I think about it a little bit like this, and maybe this is a bit too esoteric, but I was with a CEO of a really large company here in town, much like Fortune whatever company, and I was sitting at a table over lunch with him, just the two of us, and I asked him, so what songs do your guys sing around their campfire? He's like, what the hell? What kind of question is that? So you can say culturally the stories that you tell. I think it's a little bit more romantic and interesting to think about the songs that we sing. What do we celebrate? What are the songs we sing around the campfire of your company? Now, as you grow, right? Think about a campfire. As we grow, not everyone can crowd around that campfire because the heat dissipates, the light dissipates. Well, there has to be new campfires, and that might be in India, that might be in Europe, that might be in Asia. As you grow, one, there has to be a campfire. It has to cause people to come together. Two, they have to be singing something. Three, we don't particularly care about the accent or the tonal differences, but we want to make sure the words are right. Right? The lyric, the lilt of it, that can be unto you to establish. The first, make sure that there are campfires. Second, make sure that people are singing around. Third, make sure they're using the same words, and everything else will fall into place.
You know, we following some similar mentality with that and trying to address, having a good culture at full scale. It was actually at the CEO retreat for the Kansas City Tech Council. They brought someone in from Gartner or someone, and they were talking about being client obsessed, which sounds one-sided at first, but the data supported that people want to come to work with a purpose, and they want to feel like what they're doing is important, that it matters, and it's impactful upon because especially when you're in a remote environment, like you write some code, you push a button, and it goes halfway around the world, and you might not fully understand the impact that it has. So that's something that I feel has been great for us. Now, with that, so when I'm in Cebu, I'll talk about that. Be obsessed with your client success, but do it within the reasonable realm of your own happiness. This doesn't mean work 300 hours a month, but care. Think about it. Like, what can I? Because if you can do things, especially in like a service business as well, if you feel that the people that are providing services for you care, or whether regardless of what it is, if you feel like there's a level of caring. First off, that's tough to teach or train. You care or you don't.
You got to hire for it.
Yeah, it's tough. So we look for that. But with that, you're a lot more understanding and accepting of things not being perfect or right all the time. Like if I feel like you care and you fail, I'm like, okay, cool, let's try again. Yeah. If I feel like we're failing because you don't care, oh man, it's not the best reaction that I get over time.
No, but it's clear that you've built something where the culture feels, at least in the conversations we've had, very similar in Cebu and here in Kansas City. So, and I think a lot of that is A, hiring, B, making sure that as we said, the words and the songs are there, but nailing hiring. We've become real picky with that, and with that, it's about communication, and also, like I said, it's tough to gauge whether people care, but I think that's like the number one intangible quality that I look for when I hire someone, and I also possibly when I fire someone. Yeah. It's like, and I'm gonna put up with your shit a lot longer if I think that you care. Just because, I've learned to value that over time. And one of the challenges, at full scale, is we at this point, we almost have 40 companies inside one company because of the way we're set up. Because our developers work exclusively for the companies that they work for. We even identify them as being on the XYZ team. And and that's what they identify with. So and that's tough too, because some clients actually we have one client that if anything they do, they have a large team with us. Anything they do here, they do for the team in Cebu. Yeah. So look at our management report, and it'll say and it'll be our manager spend an hour organizing a pizza party for this team. But I think it's so freaking cool that they really do that because they're same way we operate.
And by the way, not one person has come off of that team. They have a 100% retention rate on the team. So that's another thing that's tough. That's one of the things we're looking at as we bring in new clients. So
it makes a huge difference. It's why we did what we did with our new folks in India. They have that ownership position that everyone else has, even though cost of living and salaries in India are much less than cost of living and salaries in the United States. So we didn't have to. And actually, it's not done that much in India, which is so interesting for me, because I think that nation wants to build consumption wealth. In other words, they want to create consumers. And well, one of the great ways that you can create wealth isn't through salary, it's through equity. And it's certainly a more efficient way to do it here. So I'm really stunned that the culture of ownership and options is not as widely spread as I would have thought in a country that has the aspirations that India has.
So when I was in Belarus last year, which once part of the Soviet Union, now ripe with capitalism, one of the things that, and there's a lot of really talented people over there. I was kind of thinking that might be a good place for us to expand. But one thing that was really present with everyone there is everyone's like, no matter what they wanted to do, they were like, yeah, do I get options?
Really?
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. And now I think some of that is, as I was looking for real estate and different stuff like that, I went to one building and I was like, well, who else is in this building? And they were like, well, Uber has floors 5, 6, 7, and 8, and I'm like, okay, now I see where a lot of this came from. But but we ended up not doing business there because some of that, it's very easy to enter that market. There's not a whole lot of barriers to entry. So, I created an entity the next day I was there just because I felt like I should while I was there, and we ended up turning it off. But it was that simple.
Wow.
Like, it was super fast. It was almost like trying to get an EIN. You could just call and they give it to you while you're on the phone. I was like, okay.
Wow.
I
did not know that.
Yeah, it was.
Have to take a look at it.
So, do not buy Belarus. No, you can. No,
too easy.
Actually, there was really, really smart people there, and it's always a subject of how did certain communities and how did certain regions of the country or of the world develop these massive, like almost surpluses of smart people. I wanted to figure that out, and I do have one employee in Belarus that works for Gigabook, and he's our product manager. And hey, Paul, he's been with us for a long time. He's the reason the product is successful. But I got into this with folks, and I said, I got to figure, how are there so many smart people here? Why do you have so many programmers? Like, they took our assessment test. We almost had to make a new one because they were just crushing it. But I asked. So they said, the one guy says to me, he goes, well, when you were in school, he goes, then imagine a Russian accent. He's like, did you have study hall? Did you do home economics? And I was like, yeah, I did both. He goes, yeah, I had a second math and a second science class. And I was like, oh, wow. So I get it.
Same story for me when I had.
But that was culture driven, though.
Well, no, dude,
they wanted to win the Cold War, man.
Very early on, and I guess it was at eScout. One of the guys who was just tremendous that followed me from UMB to eScout, and had me to dinner after he was married, and we were looking through the marriage pictures, and I was so taken with how wonderful and charming and smart. I said, how is it that every one of the team members we have, and we had a fair number of folks from India of origin, inside eScout. I said, what's the secret? He says, as you said in an Indian accent, he said, Sandy, when you are 1 in 1,000 in India, there are still, you're 1 in, sorry, I screwed it up. We said, I can't remember it probably. Sandy, when you are 1 in 1,000,000 in India, there are still 1,500 other people just like you.
Yeah.
So wow. Yeah. All right. So you have to press to get ahead, right?
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about some of these economies and places we're talking about. Grit. Right? You were talking about. I don't know what the proxy is for hiring for care, but I love seeing people who have overcome difficulty.
Yeah. I like to say entrepreneurs with scars. Yeah, for sure. Like I have a lot of respect for that, and I steer away from people that have yet to actually, because you failed does not exclude you from anything later in life. In many ways, it includes you.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I don't want to put a whole lot of resource or take a lot of risk on someone that hasn't failed because they operate still as if they're bulletproof.
Lights are off.
And yeah, lights are off. But until you've just because we mark this explicit, until you get kicked in the nuts, you don't really understand how bad that can hurt. So you might not be afraid of it, and then suddenly you learn that, and you're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that again. Okay, so based on grit and all that, let's end this, and we'll play a game here. We're going to rank some qualities, all right?
Yeah,
and so we have curiosity, intellect, empathy, passion, and tenacity. And we are going, so much like we were playing a video game, we're going to create our avatar here.
All right.
And so now,
avatar for a great entrepreneur.
well, we can do this. Let's do this 2 ways, actually. So we'll rank them from 1 to 5. And yeah, I actually just like mentally counted down that list. I was like, wow. So my shoe is back on.
Okay,
so I'm
good.
struggling.
Well done.
So
Good.
we'll do this. We're going to go 1 to 5, but then we'll also say we have 100% of someone.
Okay.
So that can make it that's a little twist to the ranking. So you can
interesting.
give 100 points to these categories.
This is
Now,
a new twist. I haven't done this one.
Sandy, anytime you come by to Startup Hustle, it's my goal to challenge you intellectually, because
Well done.
yeah, because that's clearly, and I do want to point out, thank you for preparing the show in many ways, and making me have to Google things. Most time people show up and they're like, cool, what do we do? And from now, I'm going to say you should have emailed Sandy.
I'm happy to do it for you.
Yeah, I bet.
It's just, there might have to be in India or China or something.
If you have to if you have to
bit.
delegate it or something, I get it. It's fine. It's fine.
All right, so
So we have curiosity, we have intellect, we have empathy, and now, by the way, empathy is defined as being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah, of course.
You have passion and tenacity. Now, passion and tenacity, let's talk about each first. So curiosity is maybe the ability to try something new.
Yeah,
to explore.
And to be interested in other things, right?
Yeah.
To understand, to want to know more.
Yeah, to not be afraid to try something a little different.
To have, at least for me, it's that is the asking why.
Right.
Why is the system broken, or what's up, right? So curiosity.
Okay, intellect is just we'll just call that you're smart.
Brain power.
And there's different kinds. I think intellect, like there's book smart, street smart. I don't think that street smart is truly intellect.
I agree.
In the way that we'll define it here.
Let's bracket this intellect to mean IQ.
Yeah, like the guy that writes the algorithm that no one else could.
Right.
And actually, like most of the people that I run into at your office when I come by to visit, and I'm like, wow, I left your office last time. I can't remember who we talked to there, and I was like, God, I got a lot of shit to learn. All right, so empathy.
That's how I feel every day.
Empathy is, that matters.
Yeah.
Passion. Let's define that as like truly having a true ability to be involved in whatever problem you're solving or the activity.
Yeah, to be all in.
Right.
Be all in. I mean, I'm not going to go into this with sort of tepid feet. I'm going to go in passionately wanting to solve or passionately wanting to do. Right. I'm all in.
And then tenacity is grit.
Yeah,
like you defined it. Is that fair?
Exactly.
Okay, so should we play tandem, or do we need a couple seconds to rank them? Because I know what I have first and second.
So
actually.
truth told on this, I've played this game a fair amount, and it's something that we talk about a lot with young entrepreneurs inside our shop, and my rankings have changed over time.
I would say mine probably would too.
Yeah, and so the one that stayed constant for me is number one for me is curiosity.
Really?
Yeah.
I believe passion.
Okay.
I just because I think it's maybe more firsthand. It's if you're not passionate about what you're trying to do, it's easy to quit. It's easy to get down, and I think that passion drives you.
Well, that's tenacity. So you're passion, but it's easy to get down, but tenacity is what's going to lift you back up, right? So you get up, take the punch, get up, and go. All right.
So, what's your number two? Because tenacity is my number two.
I like passion, but I think it can be misdirected. And I think if
you're
super passionate about stuff,
it's
not curious
also
about
emotional.
What you're trying to solve. Yeah,
passion and emotion hold hands.
Yeah. So I'm curiosity, and then
my number two is tenacity. I want passion and tenacity.
Yeah, and my number two is tenacity. Yeah, and I was going to say the thing that's changed for me, and it's rising up. From probably the bottom of the list, the way I thought 10 years ago, is empathy.
That's my number three.
Yeah, so it's a
And
it's a
and
fast
by the
rise.
way,
And I almost moved it into number 2.
10
after
years ago,
curiosity.
empathy was probably my number 5.
Yeah, it was for me
And I've
too.
learned a lot,
Precisely.
empathy's tough because in order to be a good leader, to be an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur, at some point you're going to probably have to be a good leader.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to do that with zero empathy.
Well,
And my
and-
wife always gets after me for this,
And
but I try.
As your
I'm
company,
trying.
as your company grows, you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, now you're dealing with human capital, not
Yes.
just intellectual capital or financial capital. So your realm.
So empathy is your number 3?
Yeah, I mean, maybe getting close to surpassing tenacity, but right now I'm gonna leave it as number 3. And the other
Okay.
one was intellect, and what was the other one?
Well, left for
Yeah, 4
for
and 5.
for you is intellect and passion. Now for
Yeah.
me, curiosity is number 4.
Okay, so I'm gonna flip. So you and I are the same, except we're gonna flip these two. I'm gonna put passion number 4. I'm gonna put intellect number 5.
Okay, and then my number 5 was also intellect. I'm curious now. Tell me if your reason is the
that
same
word
as mine.
curious, right? Go.
Okay, look, if you're passionate and tenacious, you're going to get through a lot of hard times. If you have empathy, you will understand what your employees and your clients need. If you're curious, you're willing to try new things. And the reason I have intellect last is because if I get those first 4 right, I can hire a hell of a lot of smart people,
For sure.
especially people that are smarter than me.
But I think curiosity is a little bit of a hack for intellect as well, right?
Sure.
If you're curious, you're
Yeah.
probably thinking
Yeah.
deeply, or at least semi-deeply about things. So, a lot of really smart people out there sometimes can't take the leap off the cliff because
Right.
they know the odds of doing something usually are it's going to end in failure. And really, really smart people want to be the smart people of the room.
Yeah.
So sometimes failure to act ensures that they don't fail.
Right, and that's not
And
really the right way.
Smart people don't want to fail. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for those who have great intellect, but I have seen it backfire often because, look, in the end, I think McKinsey or Bain just came out in a fascinating study said that as leaders and great managers, anything above a 126 IQ actually diminishes your ability to lead and manage.
Well, no wonder I'm good at those things.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
There's hope. There's hope for me. Hope.
So just to recap, so DeCoursey had passion, tenacity, empathy, curiosity, and intellect in that order. Mr. Kemper went with curiosity, tenacity, empathy, passion, and then intellect.
So we just
Yeah.
flopped curiosity and passion. We're very similar, except I put curiosity as number 1. You put passion as number 1.
So we don't have to spend too much time on this, but if you had 100 points, where do you put the majority of, because the ranking them and where you would, where
So this is a new game for me.
this is the avatar. This is that avatar moment.
Now,
But you have to paint the mental picture because here's Sandy, who, by the way, prior to the episode, did show us very convincing pictures of him looking just like Mr. Clean.
That's
I
great.
mean,
that's a good way to end this.
so
Thanks so
yeah,
much,
but this
Mike.
is how I want people to picture your avatar on this game.
hands on hip.
So Mr.
let's see.
Clean has five little energy bars like you would, and you get to fill this up and build your player.
I really don't like sort of spreading this out. So I'm going to be a little bit controversial here, and I'm not going to take the easy answer and say 20, 20, 20. I'm going to go with I'm going to heavy up on my curiosity. I'm going to go 40 curious, 25-ish, maybe even 30 tenacious. So what am I at now? That's going to give me
That's
70. And I'll go 10, 10, and 10.
Okay. So the Mr. Clean looking avatar has got a score of 40 for curiosity. Were we building ourselves or a different entrepreneur? I think we got to see ourselves in this, right?
Depends how self-aware we are. But
If I had to build one that was based on my reality, I'd be like 90% passion, nine for tenacity, and like a 0.33 for everything else.
But if we were building what I needed, I'd be heaving up on it.
Yeah, that's what we're wanting to do. Yeah. So,
all right, so I'm
10, 10, 10.
Well, I'm gonna go. No, sorry. I'm gonna make it even better. I'm gonna go 25, 5.
What's the 20?
Empathy.
Okay.
It's my fast riser.
And by the way,
give it 10.
and thanks for not being a turd and going up to 110 and saying no matter what you do, you give 110%. Because I would, God, I've had people do stuff like that in that situation. I'm like, yeah,
Matt,
thanks. Yeah.
But the sky's not the limit because people have landed on the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Depends
So
who you ask.
I'll never be asked on the show again. What sort of saccharine more aphorisms can we give?
All right, so this is what I'm going with. I'm putting 30 points to passion.
Okay.
I'm putting 20 to tenacity.
Yeah.
I'm putting 15 to empathy.
Mm-hmm.
What do I have left here? I got to do
It's
some
too late
math.
in the
I'm
day.
like 35. I'm like, now, I'm going to tip my own scales. I'm actually going to go, I'm going to go 30 passion, 25 tenacity.
All right, you're 55.
And then I'm going to go 15, 15, 15 because I'm cool with those three actually being kind of balanced. I think that the passion and the tenacity is like a turbo
You're
button.
at 55 and then 15, 15, 15?
No, is it 55? That's 70. Yeah, I got 30. It's 100.
Is that 100?
I think so.
Is that good? 15, 15, 15 is 30?
I went
Come on, man.
I went 30 and 25.
Okay, got it.
And then 3 15s is 45.
Okay.
That is 100.
Is that working?
Yes.
Does that get you the math that you need?
And
you sure about that?
Yes.
I don't want you to be worried about
55 plus 45 is 100. Am I correct?
this.
Or do I need to put a 25 and bring it up to 110?
I thought it was 50. I thought it was 55 plus 3 15s. I mean, what did I miss there?
55 plus 3 15s is 100.
Is it? You sure?
Yes.
Okay, just double checking.
Okay.
You can put your shoes back on.
Back to that part about not being invited back.
I give you actually beads of sweat.
Okay,
as he was putting
there
his
are
shoes
not
back
beads
on.
of sweat, but I will be honest with you. I was like, okay, look, I'm positive this is 100. But so instead of being the 110 guy, you're going to be the, are you sure that adds up to 100?
Exactly. I'm bucking never to come back.
By the way, my
Well
25
done.
looks more like a 28 and a 9 had a baby. I'm not really sure. So, all right.
So we agree. At least tenacity. Be tough, because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to get smacked.
And I would almost add a sixth category of like not giving a shit, because that's like on some levels you can't. All right. So isn't it crazy? It's been over 100 episodes since you were here, because it didn't feel like that long.
Congratulations.
Ago. Thanks.
190 countries. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Hopefully you're doing business in all of them. And hopefully all the rest of you are too. Now with that, we have something new that we do at the end of the shows now that we didn't do at episode 100, and we call it the Founders Freestyle. So what we realized is that due to the ADHD nature that the show takes on many days, that sometimes we could have the ability to leave anything or everything unresolved. So you get a moment, you get as long as you want. You can really say anything. Like if you wanted to read the Gettysburg Address right now, that is within the rules.
Just so happens. Let me pull.
No, don't. It's too long. Do you know the whole thing?
I do know people that actually carry the Constitution with them around.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
And people for whom I have a tremendous amount of respect.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing, right?
Wow. I mean, doesn't it require a lot of pocket space? Or
No, it's
a very small
version.
version.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm old. I can't print that small. But you can really say whatever you want. And Sandy, I think that so many people here in Kansas City and everywhere else, including myself, admire what you've done. I enjoy spending time with you because it always stimulates anything that I have to say. But I think any advice that you can give for those in and around Kansas City or worldwide would be awesome.
Advice is, again, as I said, the older I get, the less I want to give advice, because I know there's so many different ways to get things done.
But we did the money back guarantee.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would recommend most, especially as it relates to culture, is act like everyone is watching, because they are. Not out of vanity. I mean, every action that you take, everything that you do, everything that you say, pretend like the whole world is watching. Do the right thing. And if you do that, then you may not be successful, but you will not have any moral regrets.
Wow, that's deep. You have to kind of wrap your arms around that a little bit. That was like the time when Laurel Holt told me he was a coward.
Oh yeah, I remember that story. It was a great story.
And it took a second to digest, because I think that many times people will tell you to act like everyone isn't watching in order to increase your confidence. But I love the play of and doing the right thing. And you know what? I'm gonna just kind of parlay off of that. I pride myself on giving like the best advice, like not self-serving advice to others, and making decisions with and for my business partners, my employees, and my clients in mind. And I felt that and by the way, that's hard on some days, because it's easy to want to be selfish, and it's easy to want to make the decisions that are in the best interest of you. And in the end, though, those decisions will burn you down.
Yeah,
they really will burn you down. Because eventually, like, exactly, all of a sudden your pant leg's on fire, and now you're running around, and you talk about acting as if everyone is watching. If they weren't watching before, once your pants are on fire, they will be watching. But with that, I think I think in the end that you really have to do that to build a business, a team, a culture, and a reputation that matters. Because if people start to believe that the decisions that you're making are only in the interest of you, then you will find that it's only you and not other people around you that believe in you. And it doesn't mean that you have to get along with everyone. Like, I don't have, like, some of the most beneficial and awesome moments in full-scale history have been Watson and I not agreeing. Yeah. But we talk it out and we figure it out. And then sometimes it's just, but it's we get to the point where it's like, okay, it's got to be this triple win. It's for the company, for our team members, and for our clients. Yeah. Because if at any level those burn to the ground, any one of the three, we're screwed.
Yeah.
So
excellent points.
Pretty simple. And then there's one other thing. You were talking about songs at the campfire.
Yeah.
And you are leaving today with your own copy of Mixtape the Game.
Oh, excellent.
Which will let you very much revisit your favorite campfire songs.
Really?
Yeah, what's all about it. I mean, really, with Mixtape, well, here, I'll give you an example. It's hard to play with two people, but you pull a card from the deck and say, we would have to name a song. So dedicate a song to someone in the room and tell them why you chose your selection.
I'm going with Muskrat Love for you.
For me? Oh, wow. I don't even know.
Was that Captain and Tennille? Who did Muskrat Love?
I don't even know.
That's the only thing that popped in mind. So I think we should probably turn this off now.
I was gonna, because you don't.
I can't top that.
You're like dropping the mic and walking off after you're. That's a very DeCoursey thing to do when playing Mixtape.
Yeah, and I think you might just say, well, for you Kemper, it's like Highway to Hell.
It kind of makes me want to use "Fuck You" by CeeLo Green. but Sandy, lucky for you, it's been banned from play. It's literally the skeleton key of Mixtape. It applies to any scenario. Let's test that. All right, say the next card. What's a documentary about you and your travels across Europe? Well, there you go. Yeah, it plays. So, fortunately for you, I don't have to really answer the question. Highway to Hell isn't. No, actually, you know what? I'll go with "Thank You" by Led Zeppelin.
We could go Back in Black, right? Back in Black. Another.
I'm going with Sandy. I'm actually gonna eat the humble pie, and I'll say "Thank You" by Led Zeppelin, because I'll tell you why. I really do appreciate that you come by to do this. You're super busy. You got other things that you could choose to do.
You do realize my office and your office are like 100 yards apart.
That doesn't matter.
This is pretty easy.
Your office could be in my office. You still have a lot of shit to do, and I appreciate that. And I think that on behalf of the people that listen to the show, they really appreciate this as well. So with that, I'll let you go ahead and get back to whatever you need to do or weren't doing.
Been a lot of fun. Thank you.
See you all next time.